The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 seconds, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists. Dan Eve, the Crypto Raptor.
Greetings, folks.
Jake Gallons from Emblem Vault.
Yo.
Josh Igala from thestandard.io.
Greetings and salutations.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to Issue 1. Issue 1. U.S. tightens the crackdown on crypto with lawsuits against Coinbase and Binance. At first, it was just an attack on Binance, and everyone said, of course, Binance, the stateless cryptocurrency company, of course you're after them. But then they expanded and went after Coinbase as well. Coinbase, who had tried so hard to play ball with regulators. As Robinhood said, they tried to talk to the SEC and come in and register, but the SEC wouldn't talk to them and wouldn't make any rules. As Binance said, they've had troubles with their chat logs and their employees. As CZ says, everything you say could end up in court or on the internet one day. And meanwhile, the price of Bitcoin just doesn't care. Dan Eve, what's going on this incredible week with Coinbase and Binance, both attacked by the SEC?
There's some big moves right there. I think Coinbase really poked the bear when they tried to put them in court and said give us 2 weeks to decide whether whether Ethereum and co is a security, right? And then and now they've just come out and gone, right, well we'll just sue you. The interesting thing about this is that Gensler, like one of the cryptos that he said is a security, he was like, which is algo, he was shilling at a conference in 2019, shortly before he joined the SEC. But it's definitely it's winter. It's crypto kind of crypto out there, or coming out of the crypto winter on the run up to the bull run. But it's definitely regulation season. Like there's no Bitcoin pump season. There's no alt season. We're in regulation season right now. A lot of people lost a lot of money. FTX went down. 3 Arrow Capital and the fallout from that. And yeah, it seems like the regulators are absolutely on a mission right now. There's the 3 exchanges, right? It's Coinbase, Bittrex, and Binance, and also is it Beaksy as well? Beaksy also under a lawsuit. Then there's I'd be interested to see if others like I don't know other big kind of exchanges like Bitfinex, are they going to come under fire as well, especially with the links to Tether? There's always speculation about Tether being manipulated so badly and not backed, etc. Is the SEC going to go after them, or are they completely out of the SEC's hands? But the one thing that this does really make you think is that you'd be mad right now to start any form of crypto business based in the US, because they're going to be coming for you, even if you try to get regulated, even if you're like Coinbase, who are like, regulate me harder, daddy, and pushing them to get decisions made, Robinhood are even saying, and then their 19-month-long application that ended up being rejected. They're still going to come after you. So it's not worth it's not worth having your business in the US and being under such scrutiny from the SEC and being within their reach, when you could just be operating abroad and not have that as a headache. So I don't know. I think that there's obviously a lot coming out now with Binance that I used to believe that CZ was like a jet. I think it's the FTX happening all over again. Sam, he seems like a nice guy. He's altruistic and all that stuff. And then it turns out he's like one seedy motherfucker, and and really did some shady ass stuff. They even admitted to mixing customer funds and all that. So is CZ one of those guys as well? Was he really transparent, or was he really playing the game and making it look like that they were operating very efficiently and nicely under the hood, and very genuine and transparent, and the Safety Fund and all that? Was that just a myth? and is Binance gonna come crumbling down? Those messages, right? That like SEC are using as a poster, like, "Hey, bro, we're an unregulated securities like exchange." From the DMs, that's going to be hitting pretty hard. So it will be interesting to see if there's any more, if they've got access to all the chat messages, if there's any more of that floating around. But it's not looking good for Binance or Coinbase or anyone for that matter who's in crypto in the US.
Yeah, CZ's like a Bond villain, and Dan's like Homer Simpson. He's like, I really need this job. Maybe he's not so bad. Maybe he's not doing this. Maybe he's not doing that. Oh no, just a nuclear reactor. And yes, I'm being told that it's all exchanges named Bit. They're going after all exchanges named Bit or Coin, Bit or Coin. And like Dan said, we've seen this before. Right after the price of Bitcoin goes down and almost goes back up, that's when the regulators come in and try to kill Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. It's always at the weakest point, and everyone freaks out and sells all their coins, and it's always a complete disaster. And then it comes back, and you're like, what was that? What were we worried about? Except this time it only dipped slightly and then came right back up. So I'm not sure what's up with that. And also, I'm reminded of this idea of Coinbase and Robinhood inviting the regulators in, trying to work with them. The original example of that was Charlie Shrem with BitInstant. Charlie Shrem invited the feds in, tried to work with them. They, of course, kind of used this against them, found out that one of his employees and perhaps Shrem himself were sending money to the dark web and the Silk Road and selling Bitcoin where it shouldn't be sold. But still, this idea of an original company trying to sell Bitcoin to people, pretty simple idea, being shut down and eventually prison and so forth because they tried to work with the regulator. So it's an unfortunate message they're sending. Jake Allen, what do you think about the biggest week in crypto, Binance and Coinbase? Sued.
Well, I think we're finally going to get to some finality for the regulatory perspective, which, you know, has been on everybody's mind since probably the inception of Bitcoin that everyone's been asking. This is that stage of that old cliche, right? Where it's like, first they laugh at you, then they want to be at you, and then they fight you. And this is the final stage. It's then we fight you. Ultimately, I believe, and this is just my speculation, is that it's going to end up being quite favorable outcome for the American crypto exchanges. And the reason why is because of one thing: money, baby, lobbying. The lobbyists never lose. They never lose in America. And crypto lobbying, from what I hear and from my friends who work in various political circles and lobbying circles, are really ramping up. So you combine the lobbying with the lawyers of Coinbase and Binance, and I think Bittrex kind of just left and said, "Screw this, I'm out." I think it's going to be a fight that's probably going to extend for some years. Maybe we chop, or maybe we just go bullish, which is what you'd mentioned. Bitcoin did not sell off like it traditionally does whenever there's negative regulatory news. So I'm finally excited to see it going. And ultimately, what might even happen is Gary Gensler, you know, might even be removed from SEC. Some of the senators and congressmen are coming after him, of saying, you know, could be a confliction of interest from that, how he used to teach down at I think it was MIT courses with blockchain. And now I don't know if it's just the Binance lawyers who are putting a spin on it, saying that he asked them to be an advisor at some point. Now he's pointing around and saying that they approached him. So there's a lot of intermingling. And then you add on his relationship with SBF and that whole debacle. I think that this gets tied up in court, and the judges will have a favorable outcome, which will probably just lead to some fines. And then we could finally get our ETF and everything else that we need to finally get this product out and institutionalized.
Well, I love your optimism, and I hope that Coinbase's lawyers can fix everything, although I feel it's almost to the point where I need to go out there on the street and hold a sign that says, legalize Coinbase. Legalize Coinbase. It's not too late. Josh Shigala, we said this over and over again. We said that ETH was a security. We said this one was a security and that one is a security. We got nothing for it. They all went up in price. Now, years later, the Fed has finally come around to tell everyone that everything's a security. Even then, it's only 10 out of 100 or something. What do you think about the latest charges against Coinbase and Binance? Haha, you're muted.
The old no. Right, look, if incompetence was a sport, then Gary Gensler would definitely already be in the Olympics. He'd probably be breaking records at this stage. But then he'd be suing the Olympics, calling the medals securities, and then forgetting where the medals are that he won. And it's just a whole, I mean, the whole outfit is a ridiculous farce at this stage. And it's unfortunate because we can start to see that the fact that these, even when they do sue, like Ripple did, Ripple in the early days tried to play ball. I'm not a big Ripple fan, but just looking back at the story, Ripple tried to play ball with the regulators. They got all the licenses, they got everything. Next minute, they wake up and they've got they're sued. So it's like it happens every time where the good actors that are trying to play ball, trying to do good things, get sued and get everything just robbed from them, and then they eventually have to just go overseas. They have to go offshore if they want to continue doing business, and it's really the Americans that suffer because there's not clear, good regulation. And generally speaking, what's happened in the past is that there's regulators are used by establishments, and I mean this is the entire Ayn Rand thesis behind Atlas Shrugged, is that, well, you know, these big players will use the state to basically monopolize and have this regulatory capture game in place, and this is really, the banks see how much money there is to be made in crypto and Bitcoin. And hey, well, let's just kick out all the newbies, all these players that have worked really hard to enable basically the banks to take over at this stage. So, you know, and as for the price, I mean, we've had such calamities over the last few years with you know, Terra Luna and with FTX and 3 Arrows Capital and yada yada yada. The list goes on. That by the hands that are holding now are tighter, you know, are harder than diamonds, and so there's really nothing left to let go. There's no more fear in these people. They're just like, look, we've held through all of this. So yeah, and that's what I feel is happening now. So I'm pretty confident that we're in crypto spring.
Well, I agree, Josh. I think the closest we have to a hero in this is Brian Armstrong. And even then, by hero, we're seeing that Coinbase wanted to work with the regulators so that they could become a monopoly, so that they could then build up walls of regulation to keep out their competitors, right? That's the closest we have to like hero, in that he's out there following the laws. On the other side, we have CZ and Binance, almost and allegedly and practically a pirate. He gets kicked out of this country for this. He gets kicked out of that country. He refuses to pay this country. He just keeps going. It almost seems like there's no way to join the good side and do the straight and narrow, especially when an era where the Oakland A's owner is being rewarded for running the team into the ground, and then will get free money from the government of Las Vegas to move the team. Dan, a second round. Is there any way for anyone to do the right thing in cryptocurrency? If you wanted to open up an exchange like Brian Armstrong or CZ, what was the right thing to do? Was there any right thing to do?
Not be based in the US and service US customers, just to not have that headache, right? Because it's gonna, the long arm of the law is going to come out to you eventually, and we've seen, you know, the people. The US has got a great sort of extradition history, right, of being able to grab people that have been overseas and have like hidden away, right? So it's almost just like, I don't know, but I prefer not to have the headache at night especially as nothing's really been ruled on yet. All these court cases have been ongoing for years, and even the XRP one, and you're still hearing that there's back and forth on it. So it's a very gray area, and you're taking a huge risk, whether your business survives or whether you end up doing time for whatever reason. So if you're if you don't get favor, as we saw with Charlie Shrem, right? Exactly. So he was sort of made an example of. So if you're Bitcoin only, I mean, I'm not sure if any kind of Bitcoin, if the SEC would go after you, because one thing they have kind of said publicly is that I'm sure hasn't they said that Bitcoin isn't a security, therefore you can't really, or they've said it in kind of a roundabout way, right? So it's really unlikely they're going to go after Bitcoin specific trading.
At this time, they've said Bitcoin and I think Ethereum are not securities. I'm not sure why, but they've decided.
But didn't Genza recently, when he was like being questioned, they asked him, "Is Ethereum a security?" And he kept going, "Well," like he was like side skirting around, and he wouldn't kind of answer. So even that doesn't seem in the safe zone right now. But ultimately, going back to the biggest point is that it's according to BitInfo charts, the exahash rate at the moment is 423 exahash a second, which is literally the highest it's ever been. I mean, it looks like that's pretty much a record, right? So that's the hash power isn't stopping right now. The hardware securing the network isn't stopping. One thing I did see that was funny, I posted this in the very very quick digression. I posted it in our little Telegram the other day. But there was a news article on Coinbase that said Vitalik's warning. Ethereum is known to be this was, I don't know what news source it was, Ethereum, but it was on Coinbase. Ethereum is known to be the most secure layer 1 blockchain. That's not right, is it? Bitcoin's the most secure layer 1 blockchain. Am I missing something?
I mean, you can say anything you want. It's just kind of marketing speak.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's a bit silly. Anyway, Bitcoin marches on, and so we're within a year now of the halvening. So hold on to your hats.
I do think the Ethereum situation is slightly confusing, and I can see where he's confused. Originally, it had a pre-mine and a company, kind of like a security. Then in the proof of work phase, they kind of spread the token out to everyone. So in the proof of work, then they switched to proof of stake. And now it's proof of stake, and it's going to get centralized again. So what is it really? It's a very confusing thing. But Bitcoin, people just want to buy it. They have the exchanges they want to go to. They want to get some altcoins. Maybe it's like gambling. Maybe it's like stocks, whatever. Jake, what do you think? CZ's casino had more slots than Brian's. Now they both shut them down. There's no way to win if you're running an exchange. Should we just wait till the new casinos are built by banks? Then we'll have the right to invest in some fun altcoin games.
I don't think CZ's going down without a fight. This guy is a whale. He is somebody who I've never seen this before. He says the headquarters is wherever I am. This guy scaled Binance to become a unicorn in, I think, the fastest in history. 6 months, 7 months, a completely decentralized entity that he's working right there. He's been playing regulatory arbitrage for 5 years now, 6 years now at this point. I think it just ends up with a massive fine. I think they probably have a large fund. I believe $13 billion in Bitcoin is sitting in just one wallet alone. Who knows how much CZ has stashed away behind the scenes, right? How much he's put through CoinJoin. Was there some foul play per se, or was he commingling? Probably, honestly. I think they all were at some point. I think he'll get a similar treatment to what Arthur got. Arthur Hayes, although Arthur Hayes is American, he got pretty much nothing, right? He got 6 months house arrest when he was facing like 10 years in prison. So I don't know. He's got good lawyers. I think CZ's probably got the same thing. Maybe they shut down Binance US. That seems like what's going to be happening. Coinbase will hold it down, and maybe just Binance just stays out of America. I find it hard that somebody that large is going to get taken down from a U.S. Regulatory body at this point, where most U.S. regulations have kind of lost all their credibility. Nobody really trusts them, right? We saw the SEC charge Binance, CFTC's charge Binance. Will the DOJ, I think, is probably the biggest thing. If that happens, maybe there's some issues. But at this point in time, I think it just comes down to fines. He's too intermingled with the ecosystem for somebody that large to go down. That would be like them trying to shut down Facebook. These guys are smart. They know exactly what they're doing. When there was a threat of anti-competitive laws with Facebook, what did they do? They just tightened everything up and made everything more integrated so that it's impossible to pull it all apart. I think it's a similar situation here. I just don't see CZ going down.
Now, I'm not saying they've been successful, but they are trying to shut down TikTok. What do you think about that, Jake? They are going straight up against TikTok.
Oh boy, right? You can't get in between Zoomers and their 10-second dances. It's not allowed. That might even be more of a crime than what CZ's done.
See, they're gonna get you. They're gonna get you. So, Josh Shigala, what do you think? Go fast, break things, build a wad of cash, buy the lawyers, win. Another horrible example for the children, like the owners of the Oakland Athletics.
Yeah, and the thing with Cheng Peng Zhao, like CZ, at this stage, he really is kind of a regulatory wizard. Like we've run Vaultoro since 2015, and it's hard, man. It's hard. It's hard being a Bitcoin business.
You can't just run it from your laptop in a cafe, Josh, because it seems these hacker guys make it look easy. I don't know.
Yeah, no, like he's a true wizard. I mean, if he'd lost any Bitcoin, he'd probably find it behind your ear. That's how much of a wizard he is, and it's phenomenal. I really take my hat off to the guy at how much he's been able to basically walk that tightrope and still build trust in the space and capital. What's very, very phenomenal to me is how the actual operation and security works, that there hasn't been a major hack. I mean, there's been a few here and there, but there hasn't been like a major one yet. And that in a sort of decentralized, centralized entity is phenomenal. It's really phenomenal because, I mean, Vaultoro has never had a hack, but we're quite a centralized unit. We know what we're doing, but God knows, nobody even knows where the heck's Binance is based. It's unbelievable, and thousands of employees. I don't know about thousands, but a lot. It's an incredible operation.
And they had a major amount of withdrawals lately and seemed to have settled it just fine.
Yeah.
Everyone would fear that they wouldn't have the money or something like that, but they got right through it.
They stress tested, yeah.
All right, exit question, predict the future. What will happen, Dan Eve? Will Brian and CZ end up in jail? Or as Jake says, will they just get a fine and a rap on the wrist?
No, I'm with Jake. I think I don't think there'll be jail time. I think there's going to be some fines, maybe some big fines. That they might even try like one of the kind of again making an example of the crypto industry, and crypto is the biggest fine in history, because then it would make the current banking system look better, and they could say the record's now held by a crypto company for nefarious activities instead of the banks. And they might try something like that, especially knowing how cash rich Binance is. But yeah, jail time it's quite a serious thing, right? They've got a he's got an army of lawyers, I'd imagine, in front of him. And as we're seeing with who was it recently? Even with FTX, right? He's saying, well, Sam Bankman-Fried was saying, well, the lawyers were the ones not making the decisions, but they told us it was okay to do X, and they told us it was okay to do Y. So obviously, I think there's a big difference still between FTX and Coinbase and Binance. But I think that there's a lot of legal work that would have been done to ensure, like, CZ's a clever guy. He's He's as you know, Josh calls him the wizard. So he's probably got a lot of risk, not risk. He's got a lot of, what's the word? Not pushback, but he would have handed off the risk to other entities to have made those decisions for him that he can fall back on, and maybe even one or two instead of going to just one legal firm. He's got opinions from 2 or 3, so he can say, hey, look, the consensus was I was totally correct in the way I operate my business. These guys said it was totally fine. So I'm sure that they're clever people with a huge amount of money behind, but also the impact on you know, the people they're meant to protect, right? When the SEC is doing this, it's like, we're protecting investors, but then loads of people got angry because even though the price rebounded, the price slumped in a bunch of stuff, and they're like, hey, that's not protecting us. You just basically made my shitcoin like depreciate in value just by serving up this lawsuit. So sometimes these things are kind of what are they called, self-fulfilling prophecies, right? You know, like it's by the very nature of them pushing a lawsuit, they're saying, "Hey, look, the price dumped massively. Therefore, we protected you from even further, you know, harm from these crazy shitcoinery token people."
Your lawsuit killed my shitcoin, you bastards. Jake, what do you think? Do you agree with yourself? It'll just be fines, no big deal.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I just think it's good. It's going to be good news for the crypto space. There is a large macro game theory playing here, whether the U.S. Has something up their ass or not, and they're going to figure it out. I think it does feel like this wave of kind of like entrepreneurial leadership is kind of taking over from a lot of entrepreneurs trying to get into politics to some of the hopeful like septuagenarians and like old politicians, career politicians that are finally hopefully going to age out here pretty soon. It just seems like it's all just kind of too strong here. And now you see other jurisdictions, or I guess you could say other countries, like Hong Kong is opening up shop. China, like certain areas of China is opening up shop. You're seeing different parts of Europe saying they want to be a hub. I think once you slap some sense into maybe a few of these career politicians who are really just kind of holding the entire thing up, floodgates are going to be open, and hopefully it can just bring another fresh wave of innovation here and not encourage all of the brilliant minds to move offshore, which I see a lot of those in the crypto space say will happen if there is like a massive hammer that comes down. To me, it just seems highly improbable.
Josh Shigala, how does it turn out? Just some fines and no big deal? Maybe they could even pay the fine in Bitcoin.
Well, well, I mean, the reason why, I mean, everyone knows the reason why the traffic fines don't really bother people that own supercars, right? Because it's just like, what? It doesn't even mean anything. The real absolute annoying thing about these fines are that none of that money goes to actually helping victims of, you know, let's say the FTX debacle, which some could arguably say the SEC had a giant hand to play in that, you know, in that debacle, or even, you know, Bernie Madoff victims. Like, no fines that the SEC actually take actually goes to victims of crimes. It's just a toll gate. It's a toll gate to operate. And what an astute businessman does is calculate that into this business plan or her business plan, and then just keep going. And so that's what I find unfortunate about all of this farce, that it's there to protect the users, because the actual users that have suffered by the hands of bad actors don't see any of this money.
There needs to be an SEC SafeMove fund. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but I'd rather just, you know, Binance keep doing that rather than these clowns that, you know, have probably never even used Bitcoin or crypto or anything like that. You know, they're just ineptitude incarnate.
Binance and CZ did famously say once that all the coins would be Seifu, so you don't have to worry. Check out worldcryptonetwork.com, where we've got videos from 2020, 2019, 2017, 2016, and 2014, all from this day, including the 2014 BitGive bowling tournament. Look at this. We had Kraken competing with Zappo, competing with Coinbase. BTC Jam was there, BitPay, and BitGive, all the original Bitcoin companies. There's Jason King from Running Across America, and that was 9 years ago today.
I've still got one of those BitGive t-shirts.
Classic Bitcoin charity, BitGive. Shout out to Connie Galippi and good old BitGive. Moving on to issue 2, Bitcoin is a cult, offers no refuge, and doesn't help even the bad guys, said Black Swan author Nassim Taleb. He says that cryptocurrency is a contagious disease, an obsolete product of low interest rates, and while he was once a critic for Bitcoin and his primary reason was money laundering, now he says Bitcoin's not even any good for money laundering. It's too traceable. Jake Gallons, what do you think about Nicholas Nassim Taleb, the Black Swan author, continuing to hate on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency?
You know, it's really unfortunate because I was actually a big fan of a handful of his books that I've read, including, you know, The Black Swan, Really Brilliant Mind. You'd think he'd come around, especially for someone who discusses hard money quite often. He's one of those boomers, man. I'm just going to say it straight. He likes the attention. Maybe he's just mad because he bought the top ones and got dumped on by everybody else. I just honestly, I don't, jokes aside, I don't understand like what his issue is. It seems like it's kind of this same kind of group of individuals who just consistently will not look past their own ego and look under the hood to see. There are a ton of scams, that is for sure. But the fact that he just comes out after Bitcoin consistently too, right, of being the hardest money, being the one that actually has no scams, really, you don't see many individuals getting their wallets hacked or getting their Bitcoin NFT stolen out of their wallet, right? That kind of stuff just doesn't happen there because Bitcoin's just not Turing complete. There is probably a majority of the market that is a little bit scammy, but if you're somebody who believes in, you know, free markets and capitalism, if people want to go be degens, dude, and you know, go trade on the internet casino of various types, then like, so be it. Why consistently put yourself out there in the news and say that, you know, you're a patriot of free speech and free choice, but then consistently berate people when they go actually do that?
Josh Shigala, isn't it ironic that the author of Black Swan can't see a black swan like Bitcoin coming?
Yeah, it's actually quite phenomenal and sad. But it's typical in, you know, I've run the oldest, longest running Bitcoin physical gold exchange. And I know these gold bugs, and it's very, very unfortunate that a lot of the gold bugs refuse to see the value in Bitcoin. And it's just so strange to me. I just don't understand it. But I would say that some Bitcoiners also have the same problem with altcoins, where they don't see the value of some other altcoins, which there are some other values there. It's technology, and technology evolves. So Bitcoiners, sadly, some of the maxis, the hard maxis, are the same as some of the gold bugs. They're missing out on really interesting technology and even gains because they just refuse to even look at it and just go like, la, 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 I don't understand, I don't want to understand, I'm just going to call it a sham or a scam. And that's what Goldbugs, like he does, and what some Bitcoin maxis do for some other projects. Yeah, there are a lot of scams, for sure. But I mean, Gold's had 3,000, 5,000 years of scams. Like, scammers go where there's real value. That's an unfortunate truth. And, but yeah, Look, gold, silver is a rare, wonderful assets to diversify into. Bitcoin and some crypto projects are also very, very interesting and fascinating projects. These are rare numbers and rare metals, and they should be working together and not against each other. We're in this fight against the fiat fractional reserve nonsense clown world that we live in, that we inherited.
Dan Eve, Bitcoin is a cult. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it kind of is, right? Like, I mean, even the definition of a cult, like the second one is a personal thing that's popular or fashionable among a particular group or section of society. Like, so it's like, you know, the fact that pulp fiction has a cult following, like, so in that sense, then, you know, fair enough. A lot of people like Bitcoin. There's also the kind of the connotations of the religious side, like the blind devotion to this thing, and the blinkered effect of thinking that, you know, there's nothing bad about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the only thing that's good. Blah blah blah. But obviously, you know, you get that with everyone. Like you get people that you know, there's I don't know, pretty much any subject you have, you can have like a certain sect of it that becomes like a cult-like following. And that's what we're seeing with the kind of maximalists who are very vocal, like extremely vocal about anything else other than crypto, Bitcoin, as Josh has said, like labeling everything as a scam, which I think's, you know, I can understand why they're saying, oh, you know, we don't like the idea that you're saying that we're all in the same boat because Bitcoin is in a different league. But Bitcoin is in a different league, but there's still value in other things. As Josh is saying, not everything's a purposeful scam. There's obviously there's a lot of projects that are just lunacy, and they're kind of scamming by incompetence, like, you know, kind of like the fact that they're pushing something that is so dumb that it might as well be a scam, but even though they genuinely believe it's a good thing, right? And so they're kind of accidental scams almost. But there's lots of projects out there that aren't intentionally trying to scam people. But going back to Taleb, didn't he also, he did a book called Skin in the Game, right? So he argues about decision makers bearing the consequences of their actions and having skin in the game to, you know, for increasing the ethical you know, thing that they're involved in. Now that's surely that's the same for Bitcoin, right? That's you know, Bitcoin is, they have skin in the game. It's a mutable ledger, so the transparency that comes with using this system for money is actually a good thing. There's almost certain parts of what his previous books have mentioned that actually should be rooting for Bitcoin, and obviously the Black Swan thing, right? The financial crisis was a black swan event. It was a massive financial crisis, right? But and Bitcoin was born out of that. So he should see, you'd think that he would see that side of why Bitcoin was needed, to take away the power of a few specific players and hand it out to the whole community to manage. But you know, he's as Jake also said, that he's an old schooler, right? He's one of these kind of you know, a bit dubious about technology, and turning these people around is actually quite difficult. And we've seen that with, you know, like Krugman, for example. Like he absolutely hates Bitcoin as well. I don't think that you'll ever swing these people. Then there's the funny ones like Peter Schiff, who I actually really like. He's just like a, you know, he's a gold bug, right? And but he's also, or I don't know, he must own Bitcoin, because he does tend to talk about it an awful lot. It's like that little secret, like that little secret on the side. But ultimately, it is a bit of a cult, right? Because, and the reason why is because people not believe in it so much, but they have this realization that the thing that they've been working with their whole life, that literally gives them access to everything, like the thing that is like almost like, you know, money is the key to anything in society, right? You have enough of it, you can open so many doors. And so when you get deep enough into Bitcoin, you realize that that key that you've had is constantly, the locks are being changed, like the key is just malleable. It's just fucked from the government making all sorts of ridiculous, and the central banks making all sorts of ridiculous decisions. So With Bitcoin, you have a more solid key because you know that key can't be manipulated, you know, and you know that there can't be more than 21 million unless there's a huge, obviously, you know, a huge consensus. In which case, you know, there may be a good enough reason for it eventually if it does happen in some crazy alternate universe. But ultimately, yeah, these guys are, I say ultimately too much. But these guys are just too old school. You're never going to win them over. It's like, you know, they're going to say it's old man yelling at the sky. And what we really want is just, you know, you ignore those people because they're just the extremists that will never be swayed, and focus on the people that are actually open to listening to what Bitcoin is and what problems it solves, rather than focusing on these people.
I think we should go back to one of the oldest forms of pristine collateral, art. You think he's that aggressive towards the art market? Does he think it's a scam? It operates very similar to how crypto and NFTs work. Maybe he just needs that kind of physical piece in front of him to kind of calm his spirits down.
I'm pretty sure Taleb would also think that NFTs are a scam and would pretty much label the entire NFT thing as one big thing. Josh, what do you think about that?
Yeah, the art market is a scam. The art market is basically a money launderer's dream, always has been, and it's been openly used as that for many, many years. You find some artist that's very unpopular, no one knows of, you buy a bunch of the stuff and then you pump it up, you get it really expensive, and then you say, well, I made all my money because I bought this guy's art. And it's because you know, no one can tell you that something is ugly, like a can of soup. That's literally just a can of soup. It's now worth, you know, millions and millions. Yeah, I don't know. I just, this guy doesn't get it. Whatever, move on. Don't worry about him.
Well, there's only one cult around here, and that's the cult of the magical Bitcoin predictor ball. Dan, Eve, will the price of Bitcoin be higher or lower this time next week?
Oh, I think there's going to be more regulatory woo-woo coming. So yeah, I'm going to go lower.
Jake, higher or lower?
I think higher, man. I'm bullish on. I'm deep down the ordinal space. There's a lot of activity going there. People need Bitcoin for that to operate. So we're not moving, or the space is not budging on the negative news. At least Bitcoin is not budging on any sort of regulatory negative news. So we're going up.
I'm a bull and I'm bullish. Josh Sigala, will you break the tie?
No, up, 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 up.
Up, up, up. And what will the ball say? Here it is, the magical Bitcoin predictor ball. It says, outlook not so good. Outlook not so good. So I have to see.
Bucking the trend. Hey, hit like, everyone. Like it. And if you don't hit like, at least give us a clap on your own by yourself in front of your monitor.
Yeah, if you don't hit like anyway.
That's the most effective form of like. A lone clap.
You can't like things by hitting the side of your monitor. You just stop that. Stop that.
Give us so many likes
as your phone.
Give me as many likes as some sort of Californian teenager. Like. That's
a lot of likes.
That's a lot of likes, yeah.
Moving on to issue 3. The petrodollar and its discontents point to Bitcoin's role in the financial future. As we all know, and historians regard specifically, the petrodollar is one of the most important consequences of the transition from the Bretton Woods framework for global finance, which centered on a managed gold standard, to the more decentralized and market-based neoliberal, some would even call laissez-faire, money system that supplanted it. But now there's trouble in Bretton Woods town. That's right. Bitcoin just might be used to sell oil, making it the Petro Bitcoin, causing the price to ridiculously rise in value. Dan, Eve, what do you think about the excitement and the future of the Petro-Bitcoin?
Well, we've seen like with the craziness going on in Russia and Ukraine, there's been upsets to the trade. The dollar being used as the index, right? So obviously there's been an opportunity there for Bitcoin to be used, but what it requires, first of all, right, before it becomes this de facto index of all things, not just petrol, but petrol, not just oil, but like things like corn, wheat, all these other sorts of markets where Bitcoin could come an index. What it requires, of course, is that countries have massive stocks of it. So if it does happen, it's going to be something that would have to be done very, very slowly. And it would only come after kind of that utopian hyper Bitcoinization where countries suddenly come out of the closet and say, yeah, we've been stacking Bitcoin for years, so we can suddenly start using it to trade each other in oil and also NFTs, right? Because Indonesia, I know you've been buying a load of Bored Apes recently, and so we'll trade you some of our crypto punks. Imagine if that becomes the standard. Like, so there's a problem with Bitcoin, like they can't use it, so they end up using like curio cards. That's it, right? The corn and wheat becomes curio card traded.
I'm picturing like the financial news, and it has a picture. It's like 1 barrel of oil equals 2.5 Bored Apes.
Yeah. But it would be a nice idea for Bitcoin to be used. But yeah, it does require countries having a stock of this currency. And part of the reason, like, isn't it part of the reason why Russia the upset to the trades in between Russia and co is because Russia had been cut off from the dollar effectively, so being cut off from SWIFT and stuff. So you need something that's going to be completely international, but at the moment, which is like Bitcoin. But the fact is that you also need the countries to all have enough of it to actually start trading it together. So yeah, I think it's a utopian sort of thing, but and maybe we'll get there one day, but it's going to be a slow, it'll be very slowly done, because also everything's politicized right now, not just Bitcoin, but I think Russia's largest bank start accepting Bitcoin, or start accepting the processing of Bitcoin literally in the last few days. There could be repercussions of that. There could be fallback in that people would say, just as if Trump had suddenly started saying Bitcoin's the best thing on earth. Like there would be like fallback from people going, oh, Trump likes Bitcoin, therefore Bitcoin is bad. So Russian banks are accepting Bitcoin, therefore Bitcoin is bad. So there's a lot of political hurdles, I think, to get over, not just from a monetary perspective, but just from countries not liking each other. And so if one country starts using it that's sanctioned, for example, then that form of money could then become an enemy, not just the country itself. But yeah, one sweet day.
Well, and I've been told that the governments were going to buy Bitcoin, Dan, but they were going to use Coinbase. And now that's all messed up. Can't do that anymore. Jake Gallen, what do you think about the Petrodollar, the Petro-Bitcoin, and the future of oil?
I mean, let's be honest. How many governments are sitting on Bitcoin right now? I think they all kind of want this. The US government is one of the largest holders of Bitcoin. I mean, they are kind of selling it through Coinbase, which is kind of ironic through this whole entire conversation. But it does seem inevitable that the US dollar will lose its reserve status at some point. Probably not, at least for maybe a few decades, because of how intertwined it all is. But you're gonna whatever the petrodollar is, or whatever the denomination is, it's gonna have to be something universal. I don't think any of these countries are gonna want to denominate in the yuan or in the lira or in the euro. I think the whole world is ready to kind of move past something. There's definitely going to be some experimentation. We'll probably even see some of these countries try to peg oil to whatever their CBDC is at some point. That kind of seems like an inevitable outcome. I don't know how other countries or governments will feel though, having their oil pegged to a centric controlled value system that can be moved and toyed with even more than how the Federal Reserve just adds a few zeros to their account when they want to print money away. It seems inevitable again to me, whether it's Bitcoin or maybe even a combination or basket of some of these proof of work coins, right? Maybe we'll throw in Charlie Lee's Litecoin in there to kind of add some stability, or their favorite tether, right? Something like that. But we are going to move past it at some point. There's definitely some experimentations. I think the new, what is the new system where it's like Brazil, was it the G5 or G7 they call it, where it's like Brazil and
BRICS.
maybe Canada? The BRICS.
Oh,
yeah.
BRICS, yeah.
I hear they're having a rough go already to start. So there's going to be a lot of volatility trying to pull away from this petrodollar. And Bitcoin will probably be the solution to that, or at least a component to that solution.
Yeah, I get BRICS confused with Live. One of them's a golf tournament. The other one's an international finance thing. But we all know the U.S. government is saving their Bitcoin to build a Smithsonian institution in every state in America. 50 states, 50 Smithsonians. They could do it with the Bitcoin. Josh Shigala, what do you think about the Petro Bitcoin and the money of the future?
The thing is that the reason why the American dollar is the default settlement layer for oil trades isn't because of some magical thing. It's because of the liquidity of the US dollar. Bitcoin is just not liquid enough for these large transactions at the moment. It's just not. This is why the Australian dollar isn't the, or the something else, is because it's just not globally liquid enough. So I just don't see it happening anytime soon. If anything, I think they would shift to like some sort of ridiculous nonsense, other fiat, like a carbon credit or something that they can still print out of thin air and put a price on and then try to manipulate and use. It won't be some rare asset that's got a true market value that's discovered. It's going to always try to be manipulatable and controllable. So yeah, I don't see it. I don't have high hopes for it. If you look at something like why Gaddafi, there's this, if you look at Gaddafi trying to settle oil trades in gold, taken down, Saddam taken down, also wanted to build a gold settlement layer for oil trades. It's something that they don't want, because losing, there's a reason why Bitcoiners celebrate at every new use case to Bitcoin, or any crypto project, but let's say Bitcoin. Like if Amazon took Bitcoin, everyone would be celebrating like, yeah, because there's now a new use case. If the US dollar lost the use case of oil settlement for oil trades, it would be such a mammoth blow to the US dollar that you would see huge inflation, because you have this glut of money to have the liquidity feasible for some of these trades, suddenly not have that use case and just have, just be sitting around behind people's couches. So yeah, I don't see it happening soon. The US government is going to defend to the death the use of oil settlement layer using US presidents' faces.
Josh is right. It can't be topped. It's no fun at all. Cancel my plans to print silver certificates. It's over. No, you're right, Josh. They'd probably just make their own coin like oil or OPEC, something like that. And then they'd pay, 1 barrel is 9 OPECs.
Well, Venezuela tried it with the Petro.
How'd that work out?
Pretty crap.
You can trade them for whatever it was, Nordic coin or London coin, Miami coin. There's been so many coins.
The way you answered that, Josh, it really reminded that question and answer really reminded me of those two Australian comedians who they're like the ship about to sink with the front fall off. How did it turn out? Well, it turned out crap. Like, the two I mean.
Well, the front's not supposed to fall off.
The front's not supposed to fall off. Why did it sink? Well, the front fell off. Have you not seen? You must have seen it.
I haven't seen it.
It's incredible.
I have to do myself a favor.
Clark and Oz, and I think we could do the whole bit here, Dan and I, about the oil and the front falling off. And
yeah, it was one of the funniest. It's like one of the funniest skits ever.
But
yeah, ironically,
he was very matter of fact about it. He had nailed it.
You're saying about Bitcoin. We shout about when there's a use case, but funnily enough, one's come along for ordinals and BRC20s. And like the true Bitcoiners are like going, no, this is terrible. This is the worst thing ever. We don't want this use case. So something that came along that literally blew, completely filled the block space, and then it became an enemy. Whereas when that happens on other chains, they're like, yeah, our chain's fallen over. It's used so much.
I don't know, Jake, have you experienced that? Do true Bitcoiners hate ordinals? And what's been going on? I hear there's 1 million ordinals now, right? So it's going pretty well, right? By numbers, certainly. Yeah.
Well, this is definitely up my alley. This is where I've been down the black rabbit hole of ordinals for the last 5 months or so. The OG Bitcoiners began to hate it. I think it feels like now the tides are shifting. There's actually even a narrative going on. It's called Bitcoin Chapter 2, which is basically washing away the maxis. And the new culture, the cultural renaissance that we're calling, is it's kind of taking over. I mean, there's a difference
between renaissance, cultural revolution, whatever.
We're taking over Bitcoin. We're making it what it should be, which is more than just pristine collateral. It's now a storage layer where you can take anything up to 4 megabytes and use that block space. There's people building NFT projects, DeFi protocols. People are tracking rare sats down. Somebody just found there's a rare sat hunter named Nolish. Shout out if he's listening. He just tracked down a bunch of sats from block 9, which was the first transaction. I know there's a bunch of them, but finding them is tough. And the way that they're doing this is actually kind of funny. They're going to centralized exchanges and just consistently buying and selling Bitcoin back and forth to kind of sift through, almost like a panning service. And they've actually got blacklisted from a few centralized exchanges because they think they're money laundering. So finding
what? Can you explain that a bit better?
Yeah, so it's just like finding sats from these early blocks. So like owning a sat from from when Satoshi sent Bitcoin to Hal Finney.
Yeah,
there's a collectability perspective there. So people are trying to find these, and the best way to do it is to go to a centralized exchange like Binance and just buy Bitcoin back and forth, because they're going to give you a new Bitcoin every time.
Yeah,
they've created some program, Josh, where they're going through and parsing their sats and looking for the so-called rare ones. And then I don't know, somehow the program must separate out the sats. None of this, I think, was the original design intent of Bitcoin, but I suppose, if you had the right program, you could do it. So they must have that.
They're writing scripts. So they've gotten banned. There's now on-chain art that's happening. Some individuals are taking documents and storing it. There's discussion around like safety for whistleblowers to take documents and store it on Bitcoin in a permanent state. People are discussing like taking their wills. And this was something Michael Saylor had said, is that he found valuable. He said, hey, if you're worth $1 billion, how much would it be worth for you to put your will on Bitcoin to know that it's permanently there and that the lawyers won't fuck you over, right? Because it's there, public. So people are finding unique use cases for it. It all just comes down to the idea of permanence, is putting something permanently there forever. If you believe in blockchain, you know that Bitcoin is going to be here the longest. It's going to survive all other blockchains, probably survive past all of us. And so putting something there forever is really appealing to many individuals. But there's all kinds of unique innovations. There's also a bunch of terrible experiments going on too. So don't get me wrong there. But it is in a highly experimental phase. I put out a Twitter post today. Over the last, we'll say 3 months or so, there's been an introduction of like 30 to 40 different standard proposals to try to figure out like what is the right one for these. BRC20, BRC 721, BRC 30, right? All these different things people are trying. And it's fun, dude. It reminds me a lot of like DeFi summer on Ethereum. It's a little bit of a combination of the ICO bubble. Instead of white papers, people are just posting out Git books with documentation. Same thing, spinning up a website, spinning up a Twitter account and a Git book to get the project started. And a little bit of NFT bull run from last time. So it's a combination of all of it. And it's all because there's an ingrained culture that exists on Bitcoin. So I think a lot of the builders feel a little bit more secure coming over and building because they know that it's not going to go away. Where it's very different of going to a brand new shitcoin and that has no community, has no culture, just the dev team. And sometimes you consider if it's even worth building because you don't know if it's going to be here 3 months from now.
Yeah, wow. It's fascinating. Even a lot of the competitor chains, I know BSV and Bitcoin Cash as well, they're all getting the ordinals happening on there as well.
Yeah, you want to hear something crazy? Actually, you guys will probably enjoy this. 3 of the top 4 marketplaces for ordinals is actually created by Bitcoin SV people. They've been dabbling and building with larger blocks for 3-4 years. And so now coming over and using 4 megabytes as the block limit, they had a lot of the infrastructure set in place. So Ordinals Wallet, Unisat, and OrdSwap are all from the Bitcoin SV community. They came in and just took it over. And now they're dominating, and now they're getting the last laugh.
Gigamegs.
Gigamegs.
Well, it's interesting you'd say that about the files, Jake, because that was the original plan for WikiLeaks, is that you would just send them files and then they would publish them. It wasn't so much like publishing them at a certain time to hurt a political candidate or having any kind of speeches or anything. It was more just a generic, like, this document, with a timestamp in a blockchain would have been ideal. And to see that considered again as another idea is a cool idea.
It's very Bitcoin. It's very, cypherpunk ideology, libertarian. Take things that you want to be out there forever, that you don't want to be censored, because we see this happening with whistleblowers or people who go against the grain. They go against the institutions or the media. They kind of just, they get wiped off the face of the earth. So if you could go down there and, upload your 30-second or 1-minute clip of saying something as a whistleblower, your interview, your publications, your thoughts, anything like that, I think is very appealing. And there's a handful of projects that are trying to figure out what's the best way to maybe white glove service, set up a portal to have it there, make it very easy for these type of people to go into it and then to sort it. It'll be interesting to see when that pops up. And that kind of stuff's not really in the public conversation or top conversation around ordinals because there's no speculation for it, right? I can't speculate on buying a whistleblower's documents and then, make a bag off of it. That's not as appealing for Twitter as it is to
I mean, if he made a 10-pack and it was Daniel Ellison, like Pentagon Papers original, like that's some spicy stuff. I'd like to get in on that. But it almost seems to me like the original people who innovated and put these JPEGs on the blockchain are the real heroes and the ones who conceivably could solve Bitcoin's fee prices in the future. The 2120, we run out of Bitcoin rewards. Moving on to the next issue 4, bringing art collection to Ethereum. The Curio Cards founders, Mad Bitcoin, an entire piece about Mad Bitcoins and the founding of Curio Cards, which, as you know, is one of the most important NFT projects ever. Jake, what do you think about Curio Cards and Mad Bitcoins and how this leads to ordinals and fixing the fee problem, and that the Curio Cards creators are the true heroes of the blockchain?
I actually referenced you in a Twitter Spaces, I believe yesterday or 2 days ago. There was a huge issue, or some people were showing frustration of how they were saying Bitcoin's turning into Ethereum. And then I said, hey, a bunch of the earliest NFT art on Ethereum is actually Bitcoin art, right? And so Bitcoin and Ethereum have kind of been borrowing each other since its inception. It goes back and forth. It's just different technologies. The Ethereum takes Bitcoin art, which had been already in place, and now Bitcoin is borrowing DeFi principles that Ethereum set in place. And I do think, as you said, it sounds so crazy that memes are going to be what changed Bitcoin forever. But it does seem like that's a thing. No one cared about Bitcoin. Well, people cared about Bitcoin, but they didn't seriously consider it until you could start putting memes on the blockchain, right? It was the same thing with Ethereum as well. So the art movement is, I think, probably the largest catalyst to onboard new users into Bitcoin and Ethereum altogether. And Curio Cards, is the first art collection. I know there's debate saying Papyrium might be before you guys or something like that. But some of the earliest art is Bitcoin art that exists on Ethereum. And that sparked, a whole new revolution of how you use blockchains as storage layers and not just speculation, although that is still a component to it and probably always will be.
Well, and it's been really interesting because it's been one of the goals with the Mad Bitcoin show, then with the World Crypto Network, which was people other than Mad Bitcoins talking about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, and then with Curio Cards, where we're trying to get new people into Bitcoin and blockchain. And we say, okay, well, maybe you like a crazy 5-minute YouTube show. Maybe you like some longer YouTube shows with different voices. Maybe you like these fun collectibles, right? You like the art aspect. And these are all groups of new people that we're trying to get into Bitcoin and blockchain and cryptocurrency. And it's really neat to see them be successful and to be discussed and stuff like that. So it is really cool. And of course, we're going to save the whole block space thing, selling JPEGs. Josh Agala, what do you think about this incredible article celebrating this Mad Bitcoins character who has card 20 and card 21, both about him?
Yeah, I'm a holder of one of those cards actually. NFTs I still find absolutely fascinating, but for reasons that aren't there yet even. I mean, they are, but they're not fully taken advantage of yet. And that's, NFTs in DeFi and stuff like that. But, you're right, Thomas. It's rare Pepes and what you guys did with Curio Cards really forged the way. And a lot of people, I mean, I remember going back to meetups and seeing all these artists going, yeah, but can we put art on the blockchain? Everyone's sort of rolling their eyes like, oh God, what are you on about? No one really gets or understands what you're talking about. But there you were, and you put that stuff out there. And of course, no one took notice for years until they did. And then they went back and tried to find the earliest ones, and there you were, the earliest NFT on Ethereum. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting idea of having like leaks being published as NFTs and then driving a market price for them. So it sort of incentivizes, important leakers. I think it's such a fascinating idea. These sorts of things aren't yet fully realized either. So also with the rise of deep fakes, I think the only way for prominent politicians and prominent people to sort of get around deepfakes is to constantly film from their point of view life and have it timestamped on the blockchain so that they can say, look, at that time I was doing this, it's on my feed, put on the blockchain. So you can, you have to have these prominents permanently recording everything that they're doing because they need to prove innocence on some of these deepfakes. They're just going to be so hard to determine if it's real or fake. So that's the only way I can see it working. And a blockchain that's independent from any manipulatable force is kind of the ultimate security in that sense. Although 4 megabytes of block just is not enough for that.
That's interesting, Josh. That same idea was brought up in Dave Edgar's book and the not very great movie, The Every. And the problem with that, though, is that it's this kind of Facebook-like organization that has the politicians wearing the camera around their neck, recording them all the time. And it just doesn't work out well for the politicians, the Facebook people. And as well, it's an interesting idea that James D'Angelo from the World Bitcoin Network and the old Bitcoin blockchain videos he brought up and he works on as a congressional institute. Sunshine is not always good. There were these votes we used to have in committees where the votes were private And it was good because the lobbyists didn't know how you voted. Once the votes were all public, which Nixon changed, the lobbyists suddenly knew who was voting their way, and you could tell whether the money you'd paid had been, worked out, whether it's been a successful bribe. So there are some occasions where you do want to have private voting, and you do want to have privacy of discussion.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to weigh those two and not just to blindly say, because there's this kind of generic thing people say, oh, sunshine is the best disinfectant. It sounds good, so it must be true. Like the boiling the frogs in the pot. That's also not true. They'll jump out. But it's interesting about curio cards. I know during the rediscovery, we had one of these large chats, and my friend Jesse Powell from Kraken showed up. And Jesse was saying, he's like, yeah, I remember, Tom had a startup and, it sounded pretty cool, but I didn't think it was going to be $1 billion. Obviously, I think he would have invested and helped out and stuff if he knew it was going to be $1 billion. But Dan, Eve, what do you think about NFTs saving the world and people writing articles about curio cards? Crazy.
Well, it's cool again to be recognized, right? You've been saying for years about how that there should be like baseball cards like on chain. These collectors items, and lots of people have compared Bitcoin to things like a collectible, right? And it's because of its scarcity, and the you sort of look at the links between Bitcoin as a scarce item and antiquities, where that have their value because there's so few of them left in the world, or just one, or I think it's a really cool concept, that it's not just the art that's on the block on chain immortalized. It can be anything, as Josh was saying about about legal documents, like about a will that can't be altered. It's on chain. It's immortalized there. And isn't that kind of like what was happening with is it timestamps? Like, the timestamping is it's the same thing, right? Except you can actually store the information on chain now. Was it timestamps? Is it Peter Todd that did timestamps? Is it timestamps?
Yeah, he had some program or something like timestamps where you could put documents on there. I'm not sure if it's still going.
Yeah, it's just the general concept of it being immortalized, as Jake said, that that's going to be around probably longer than anyone living today. Like it's going to be here for almost, it's forever if it really becomes so ubiquitous. So fingers crossed. But that's a cool idea, right? That this we as humans, we what we have to pass on down the chain through time is our DNA, right? It's a form of information. So you're just immortalizing another bit of information within Bitcoin that can be referenced forever, and it's immutable. That's the cool thing about it. And there's I think I like the idea that explaining. There are people that I could tried to explain Bitcoin to, and they just didn't get it. Money's just a thing they didn't give a shit about. It's like, hard money, hard money, so hard, the hardest of money, all that, and they just wouldn't get it. And you're like, the traditional system is blah blah, and you'd be like, just trying to explain, they just wouldn't get it. And then it's like, you can put like art on it. You can like trade art, and they're like, oh, trading art. Oh, and so the people that don't get money, don't get the idea of money, and don't kind of like to get into the politics of money. They like to get it. They like art. They like creativity. They like, whether it's music, whether it's sound, visuals, or whatever. So I think that's a cool thing, that it's got this new community of people involved who are interested in how Bitcoin can help them in their creativity. And whilst there's lots of people who turn around and be like, oh NFT's a scam, anything other than Bitcoin's a scam, blah blah blah. You shouldn't use anything, the Bitcoin chain, for anything apart from money. But it is quite a good use case that you can immortalize something on chain, right? Like, and it's a free market, right? Everyone, I heard of this free market stuff when I got into Bitcoin. It's all about the free market. And now there's a free market, and now they're going, censor the market. Sure, this duped my node. He tricked my node into putting this JPEG on it. So
actually,
it's a free market.
put the hash of my wedding certificate on there on the
That's
Bitcoin
cool.
blockchain years and years ago. Just because then it's notarized, like it's the ultimate
Yeah.
notarizer. Also, another use case is patents. Being able to hash a patent onto the blockchain. That means you don't need to show anybody your patent. And after the fact, if you wanted to dispute it, you can say, "Look, I come up with it first. Here it is, hashed on the blockchain, and the date." So you can rehash it. So there's so many cool use cases, and of course, the block space is going to come and be the big talking point again.
Well, that's like with Ethereum, right? The Ethereum was just another coin until the ICO boom, and then it became a fuel for all these tokens and all these other use cases that even Vitalik hadn't have thought of when he theorized the Ethereum. And so Bitcoin, you saw the fees go mental because the block space is valuable, right? And if people have a need for the block space and want to pay for it, you might not agree with it. From a concept that it's money just for money, but at least the miners are securing the network. It just makes your money more secure, and if you're going to hold on to it forever and never spend it, then why should you care about a high fee, right? Because when you do eventually need to sell a fraction off to pay for this, that, and the other, then at least the fact that the demand for Bitcoin for being used for stuff other than just money as as a utility, not just a store of value. It's just, I think it's like that David Bowie said, the internet's like this alien thing, back when it was first being used. And he said this alien thing, we can't even begin to theorize how many different use cases we'll find for it. And Bitcoin is exactly the same thing. It's like in 5 years' time, we'll be talking about stuff and being like, oh, I can't believe we didn't think about that. Bitcoin could be used for that back then. And that these like a little use case epiphanies will just keep on happening and keep on creating demand for the block space forever.
That's what's happening right now on Bitcoin. You're going to see a ton of new use cases pop up, and we'll see where it really goes. But probably the biggest industry, or one of the best industries to be in probably over the next decade as this continues, is a mining and block space. It's probably going to be one of the most valuable things, Bitcoin block space specifically, and will be one of the most valuable businesses to be in as fees increase. And from those that are in the ordinal space, most tend to speculate that the fees are only going to increase over time. So you'll see some flow over to stacks and some of these L2s and side chains that'll probably get some action, like Rootstock and whatever else pops up. But yeah, transacting on layer 1 Bitcoin is only going to get more expensive, but more secure, right? That's what we want, or at least that's what we were trolling for some time, and now people are kind of upset about it.
It's also interesting to see how the fashion changes over time. When we brought out curio cards, a lot of people were Bitcoin maximalists, right? They were negative about the project, the idea. They'd see it as tainting your reputation. I know Tone and Jimmy probably would have been against it if they knew about it at the time. But if you go back to the other ideas, things like rare pepes, spells of Genesis, colored coins before that, and even personally going back to, I think it was one of the first couple episodes of the Bitcoin group where Andreas Antonopoulos talked about his idea of Joey coin. And he was like, oh yeah, every kid on the yard at school will have their own coin, Freddie coin and Tommy coin and Jerry coin and whatever. But Joey coin will be the most valuable because Joey's so popular. And, Joey has a certain monetary policy. He only gives out his coins to some people, or, Freddie coin gives out his coins to everybody. And just that this idea of experimentation could be there. And that, yes, Freddie, from the yard, his coin's not very popular or valuable, but maybe someday Freddie becomes president of the United States and you had some early Freddie coins because you used to play ball together. It's silly, but we could have that kind of record on the blockchain. We could have that kind of collectible, and we can have that provenance chain where in the old days you'd say, oh yeah, we used to hang out with Obama, we used to hang out with him and stuff. And nowadays you'd be like, oh yeah, I hung out with Freddie and here's my, blockchain proof. We were in the same class or whatever. So it is interesting to think about what these collectibles can be and how everyone can make their own collectibles now. And that's really the exciting part. It wasn't just,
Oh, wait until Gary Gensler gets a hold of that kid.
that's right. He's coming for Joey.
Coming
Better
for
watch
Joey.
out.
Hey, you can do that. You could do this on Bitcoin now. I actually deployed and minted Jake BRC20. So you can go ahead and go there and go get your Jake meme coin. We're starting a new revolution of JakeFi, Jake Finance. But you can go do this on Bitcoin now, which is even better, right? Gary can't take that away from me. You could potentially start censoring my meme coin on Ethereum if he gets all of the node operators to collude. Can't happen on Bitcoin.
It's never too late to join JakeFi. I know I got one of those Marisol Vengus ones. Go ahead, man. I cut you off.
Oh, plot twist. Sorry, no, I cut you off because I just plot twist, right? So it was, it's not timestamps. It was open timestamps, and the latest from open timestamps is that they kind of got hit by the ordinals pumping Bitcoin fees. Because they had to reach out for donations. The calendar got stuck; it was out of money, so people had to donate. And they said, "Thanks for all the donations." Blah blah blah. Hopefully, that pays for a few more months of fees, but we'll see how crazy the inscriptions people are. So the immortalizing on Bitcoin directly is seems to be killing open timestamps.
The new projects are messing up the old, but we're running out of time. Dan, Eve, are you ready with a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
Oh hell yeah! I'm gonna go for something out of this world. Nassim Taleb's he's gonna U-turn at some point in the future, and he's gonna write Orange Swan about Bitcoin.
Nice.
It sounds like the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Jake Gallen, a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
Oh boy. Man, on the spot, story of the week. I guess I'll keep this in the ordinal area because there's always something new happening. This week, the main theme of ordinals is something called cursed inscriptions. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. So ordinal is the numbering system. The whole idea of ordinals is tracking individual Satoshis, putting a number. So as something is minted, right, the numbers keep extending. I think they passed 11 million. Turns out curse inscriptions is what's called bugged ordinals or bugged Satoshis. And so they started negative inscriptions. And what turns out is it to be a little bit technical, it has to do with like kind of like the op functions. Apparently there's about 70 different types of bugged ordinals that can happen. And 3 or 4 have surfaced. And so naturally, before they kind of publicized this, there was about 1,200 negative inscriptions. The degens figured this out and started purposely minting bugged inscriptions. And now they're about close to negative 90,000 in the matter of 2 weeks. So there's now ordinals going in chronological order and in backwards capacity. And it's quite chaotic. There's some value there, but that is your insanity of the week happening in the ordinal space.
Nice.
Now that people are collecting negative numbers, I have no fear for the future of curio cards. Clearly, we're going to be just fine if they're collecting negative numbers now. Josh Shigala, prediction or story of the week? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting very, very close to launching the standard.io. So we're looking at June 20th. This is a hot release here just for the World Crypto Network. We're aiming towards that date. Of course, it'll only be released once if it's secure and every check and everything's been done. So I can't give a total guarantee on that date, but yeah, the 20th is where we're aiming, and we've decided to actually launch on Arbitrum because of the fact that the ZK EVM on Polygon just hasn't got some of the functionality yet that we need. But we will be on the ZK EVM. The zero knowledge proof stuff is, for me, the ultimate endgame for layer 2s on Ethereum. So we will be on that like probably a month later as well, but we'll be launching on Arbitrum first. So that's the news from everything we're building.
Very good, Josh, and everyone can check that out at thestandard.io. My story of the week's all about the Oakland Athletics, who are still in Oakland for at least a few more days. The Nevada legislator claims to vote on Monday about this. On Tuesday, 6/13, Oakland A's fans are having a reverse boycott at the Coliseum. So if you're in the Oakland or San Francisco Bay Area, I hope you'll join me there at the Oakland Coliseum. It's a fantastic team that was run into the ground by the owner, and now the owner is going to be rewarded for selling all the players and putting a terrible product on the field. And then what's going to happen is Las Vegas is going to be all upset in 5 years when they're like, why is the owner putting a terrible product on the field and not spending any money? But that's what this is all about. So June 13, check that out. Also, Trump indicted for the second time today. Very exciting story with the documents and the classified documents going on right now. So, and that's breaking today. That's about it, though, for the Bitcoin group. Be sure to give us a thumbs up and push subscribe down below. Until next week, bye.